Good afternoon, all the dignitaries and all the panel members here and the academicians. Uh, I'm Waseem, I'm a PhD scholar in VIT School of Law, Vellore Institute of Technology, Andhra Pradesh. The topic of the paper is the a study of the role of victim impact statements in the sentencing of sexual offences in India. So, begin with this, I will start with the introduction of this paper. So we see that in India we have seen there is an alarming rate of sexual offences, despite we have all the laws related to controlling the sexual offences in India, like rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment. But we are from last 1 to 2 decades, we see that there is an increase in the sexual offense, despite we have brought criminal law amendment 2013, then 2018 also. We are seeing there is increase in the sexual offenses. And if we talk about the sentencing policy, sentencing in the courts, we are also feeling that justice is not done to the victims of the rape. So in India, we see that. The adherence of the victim and the role of the victim as a victim couldn't be undermined during the supposed presence of the victim in the court. And VIS, victim impact statements, is overwhelming approach. It's a good approach that helps the court to decide the punishment and provide moral and compensatory support to the victims. It is actually it is a statements oral or written presented to the court that describes about the harm that has been done to the victim or the survivors of that victim. So, in fact, Indian criminal justice system has underwent many challenges in providing justice to the victims in these aberrant crimes, sexual crimes. It is due to these problems in India we have seen that criminal justice system has been criticized for handling sexual offences, including inadequate investigation, low conviction rates, and biased treatment of the victims. So, but this VIS victim impact statement has been given shape and has been given some support by the victimology and the compensatory jurisprudence from last some decades. In India, we have seen in 2013, after the Criminal Law Amendment Act, Supreme Court has directed all the criminal courts to consider victim impact statements as they are describing the harm, actually the harm that they are giving the voice to the victims in the sentencing process. But unfortunately, we have seen that VIS has not been considerably taken into consideration, and there's a weak enforcement of VIS in India, and there has been a gap in evolving and accessing the victim impact statements for the victims survivors belonging to the marginalized communities and those who have no resources to access and navigate the criminal justice systems. So the objectives of this step of this study is that to identify the extent to which victim impact statements are used in the sentencing of sexual offenders in India and explore the impact of victim impact statements on the sentencing of sexual offenders and access the strengths and weaknesses of victim impact statements as a tool in the sentencing of sexual offenders in India, and at last consider the alternative approaches to victim impact statements in the sentencing of sexual offenders in India. So there are some four types of which I have observed. There are four types of victim impact statements. First is that personal impact statement, which is directly related to the victim or survivor, which talks about the injuries, which talks about the harm which has he faced while the offender has committed any sexual crime against the victim, like emotional, physical, and physical, emotional, psych suffering. So another type is community impact, which impacts. This is a statement that discusses how the sexual offense affected the community. The crime may harm the victim's family, friends, and the community. Financial impact statement. This declaration addresses the financial repercussions of sexual offense. These may include medical expenditures, misery pay, and other victim recovery costs. Then victim impact panel statement. Victim impact panels are group of victims or survivors which tell their stories. Sexual offenses may affect panel members and their family members. So now I'm talking about its use. What are the uses of VIS, victim impact statements? As we see that these victim impact statements are providing information to the judges about the crime that can help the judges to make more informed decision about the sentence to be imposed. It humanizes and it supports the victim in the eyes of law. Victim impact statements puts a face and story to the victim for achieving justice. It describes the impact of the crime on the victim, including physical, emotional, and financial harm. It can empower victims by giving them the voice in the sentencing process and encouraging them to express how crime has affected them. And it can also be used to deter future offenders by showing them the impact of their actions on the victim's life. So now talking about strengths and weaknesses of BIS, when we talk about the strengths, there are many strengths of the features of this victim impact statements, like it gives the victim a voice that turn them to feel heard and acknowledged in the criminal justice system, and it also gives awareness to the victims or the survivors, like it can raise awareness among judges, juries, and other legal professionals on the impact of the crime. And when it comes to the accountability, it can hold offenders accountable for their actions, because when the victims or survivors are itself, they are describing the impact of the harm by wholly, then judges can hear them, and they can come to the conclusion that whatever the story the victim will be disclosing, whatever the victim will be telling the court, then judges will be easily making accountable to the offenders. And that restitution, it can help to ensure that offenders are ordered to pay compensation, to pay restitution for their actions what they have did against the victims. So weaknesses, there are some weaknesses of this concept, the victim impact assessments, like victim impact assessments may re-traumatize the victims. It is sometimes it takes this victim impact statements to the biasness, because we see that every time if victims will show their emotional and subjectiveness, then it may bring biasness into the system. And then inequality, because it is bringing inequality, because it is offered, it is permitted in some specific circumstances or areas. And then unpredictability, we see that it depends on the case to case, and judges and juries may respond differently to victim impact statements, which may affect the punishments. Then if we see that in India we have any victim impact statement legal framework, but we see that there is actually no express legal framework in India, but we can impolitely talk about victim impact statements in India. A section like Section 235, Clause 2 of Criminal Procedure Code requires the court to hear the accuser on the sentencing, and then the prosecutor and evidences from both sides. And Section 357 of Criminal Procedure Code, which has been brought by Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013, it requires that in sexual assault and assault act case, the court must consider the victim's needs, including compensation, medical treatment, and the rehabilitation while sentencing. Likewise, Section 28A of the code of Indian Penal Code makes it illegal to reveal the identity of sexual crime victims. This shows that it protects the victim's privacy and dignity. And although Indian criminal law doesn't not specifically require victim impact statements, but there are some provisions and judicial proceedings that acknowledge the need of evaluating the effect of sexual crimes on victims before sentencing. And now, what is the judicial trend of victim impact statements? as we see that, like state of Rajasthan versus Tejaram, in this case, Supreme Court has said issued some guidelines requiring the trial courts to take into account victim impact statements in the sentencing of sexual offenders. Likewise, in the Union of India versus Sri Haran, 2019, in this case, Supreme Court has reiterated the importance of victim impact statements in sentencing and emphasized that they provide an important perspective on the impact of crime on the victim and their family. State of Karnataka versus Krishnappa 2000. In this case, Supreme Court noted that victim impact statements should be taken into account in determining the appropriate sentence for sexual offense and emphasized the need for the sentence to be proportionate to the harm caused to the victim. Like Bodhisattva, Gautam versus Subra Chakrabarti 1996, in this case, Supreme Court recognized the importance of victim impact statements as the evidence of the harm caused by the sexual offenses, and noted that courts should take into account the physical and mental trauma suffered by the victim. Likewise, State of Gujarat versus Kishan Bhai, in this case, Supreme Court held that while there is no provision for victim impact statements in the Code of Criminal Procedure, a victim or the victim's family may be allowed to address the court at the time of sentencing, and the court may take into account the victim's statement in determining the appropriate sentence. Now, the criticisms and the limitations of VIS, victim impact statements. It can be said that it can be emotionally charged and may result in the imposition of harsher sentences, which may not be proportionate to the offense. It may exacerbate biases and inequalities in the system. It is more often readily available to the wealthier and more educated victims. There are some other limitations, there is potential for the victim blaming, the risk of re-traumatizing the victims, the possibility of intimidation, the retaliation against the victims. So last topic related to this VIS is that what are the alternative approaches to the victim impact statements in the sentencing of sexual offenders in India? Like now, from last some decades, this victim offender mediation has been given a prominence. Like it is a facilitated dialogue between the victim and the offender to discuss about the impact of the crime and potential avenues for restitution. Likewise, expert testimony, a testimony from psychologists, social workers, or other professionals to provide the court with a more nuanced understanding of the victim of the offense on the victim. And then last, in the restorative justice approach, it prioritizes the needs of the victim and focuses on the repairing the harm caused by the offense. So now the conclusion of this study is that victim impact statements have the potential to improve the sentencing outcomes of sexual offenses cases. VIS is a tool that could be relied on the victim by giving more voice to them in the criminal justice system, and there is a need for improving awareness and understanding of the impact statements and among stakeholders, enhancing access to victim impact statements. Equal access and fairness in the system would be having positive impact on the use and application of VIS. All the stakeholders involved in the criminal justice system make it sure to give input to the VIS, victim impact statements, and it is significant to bring policy changes and reforms aimed at improving the use and impact of victim impact statements in the criminal justice system. So ma'am, it is all from my end. If I would be happy if there is any question, so that I could try to answer.
So thank you, sir, for your presentation. Is there any question from the academician and researchers point? I think there is no question. So thank you, sir, for your kind presentation.